Influence is a powerful force that shapes the world around us, often in ways we don't immediately recognize. When we think of influence, it can appear as something positive, like inspiring others to grow or achieve their potential. However, influence can also manifest as manipulation, a hidden force that distorts reality, controls emotions, and steers decisions without the affected person even realizing it. This darker side of influence often reflects what we associate with the term witch. In this context, a witch is not someone practicing ancient rituals or spells, but someone who wields influence in a way that undermines your mental, emotional, and spiritual stability. It's vital to understand how such influence operates, especially when it's negative, so that we can identify and neutralize it. A person with a manipulative influence often operates with an acute understanding of human psychology. They know what buttons to press, what weaknesses to exploit, and what fears to amplify. This type of influence doesn't come in the form of overt control, but through subtle gestures, words, and actions that plant seeds of doubt, insecurity, and dependency. For instance, someone may use flattery to gain trust, but later twist that trust into a tool for control. They might offer support or guidance that initially feels empowering, only to later use it as leverage to manipulate decisions. Over time, this influence can become suffocating, leaving the individual feeling trapped, unsure of their worth, and dependent on the manipulator for validation. One of the most common tactics of this kind of influence is creating confusion. Confusion is a powerful tool because it disrupts clarity and confidence, making it easier to insert ideas or beliefs that serve the manipulator's agenda. When someone constantly questions your decisions, opinions, or even your memory of events, they're not just engaging in casual conversation, they're laying the groundwork for control. This process is often referred to as gaslighting. Gaslighting is a psychological strategy where the manipulator seeks to make you doubt your perceptions, thereby weakening your sense of reality. When this happens, you may find yourself second-guessing even the most straightforward situations. For example, a manipulator might deny a conversation ever took place, claim you misunderstood their intentions, or insist that your feelings are unwarranted or exaggerated. Over time, this repeated dismissal of your reality can make you question your instincts and lose trust in your judgment. Another hallmark of this influence is the ability to exploit vulnerabilities. Everyone has insecurities or areas of their life where they feel less confident. A manipulative person will identify these weak spots quickly and use them to their advantage. If someone senses that you're particularly sensitive about your career, for instance, they might make subtle remarks to amplify your self-doubt, such as, "Are you sure you're qualified for that?" or "I heard they're considering someone else for the role." These comments may appear harmless on the surface, but they can plant deep doubts that grow over time. The same applies to personal relationships. A manipulative individual might say something like, "I just don't think they appreciate you as much as I do," fostering isolation and dependency. A less obvious but equally dangerous tactic is the projection of fear. Fear is one of the most paralyzing emotions, and when used as a tool for influence, it can control actions, decisions, and even thoughts. Fear can take many forms: fear of losing someone's approval, fear of conflict, fear of failure, or even fear of being alone. A manipulator thrives on creating scenarios where their target feels that the only way to avoid these fears is to comply with their wishes or accept their version of reality. For instance, they might frame their influence as protection, saying things like, "I'm only doing this for your own good or you'll regret it. If you don't listen to me." These statements may sound caring, but they're laced with an undertone of intimidation designed to keep you in line. Over time, the influence of such individuals can begin to feel all-encompassing. They may infiltrate various areas of your life, from your relationships to your work and even your self-image. Their words and actions can create a loop of dependency where you find yourself seeking their approval or validation, even when you don't agree with them. This dependency isn't accidental. It's the result of carefully orchestrated strategies designed to erode your autonomy and amplify their control. It's not uncommon for someone under this type of influence to feel a persistent sense of unease, as though they're walking on eggshells or bracing for the next wave of criticism or manipulation. In some cases, this influence becomes so deeply ingrained that it feels normal. You may come to accept their behavior as a part of your reality, rationalizing their actions or even blaming yourself for the way you feel. This normalization is one of the most insidious aspects of manipulative influence because it blinds you to the possibility of escape or change. Instead of questioning the manipulator's behavior, you might begin to question your worth, your abilities, or your decisions. This self-doubt creates a fertile ground for further manipulation, making it even harder to break free. What makes this form of influence particularly challenging is its ability to masquerade as care or concern. A manipulative person rarely presents themselves as a threat outright. Instead, they position themselves as someone who has your best interests at heart, someone you can trust and rely on. They may shower you with praise, offer unsolicited advice, or make grand gestures to win your loyalty. But beneath this facade lies a calculated effort to establish control. Manipulation often begins subtly, weaving itself into daily interactions and relationships without immediately raising alarm. Recognizing the signs of manipulation requires a keen eye and a willingness to question behaviors that might otherwise seem innocuous. Manipulators rarely operate in the open. Their tactics are covert, designed to slip under your radar until they've already taken root in your mind. This is why so many people find themselves entangled in manipulative relationships or situations without understanding how they got there. To break free from this cycle, it's critical to develop an awareness of the signs that indicate you're being manipulated. One of the most common signs of manipulation is the use of guilt as a weapon. Manipulators excel at making you feel responsible for their emotions, actions, or circumstances. They may frame situations in a way that places the burden squarely on your shoulders, even when you've done nothing wrong. For example, they might say, if you really cared about me, you'd do this, or I wouldn't be in this position if you had just listened to me. These statements are designed to trigger a sense of obligation, forcing you to act not out of genuine desire, but out of a need to alleviate your guilt. Over time, this tactic can create a pattern where you constantly feel the need to prioritize their needs over your own, leading to emotional exhaustion and a loss of personal autonomy. Another hallmark of manipulation is the ability to twist facts or narratives to suit their agenda. Manipulators are adept at selective storytelling, emphasizing certain details while omitting others to paint a picture that serves their purposes. They may recount events in a way that casts them as the victim, even if they were the instigator. This tactic, often referred to as narrative control, is particularly effective because it taps into your natural empathy and sense of fairness. By presenting themselves as misunderstood or wrong, they create a dynamic where you feel compelled to defend or support them, even at the expense of your own well-being. Criticism disguised as advice is another subtle yet powerful form of manipulation. A manipulator might offer what appears to be helpful suggestions, but their words are laced with subtle jabs at your competence or character. For instance, they might say, I think you're doing great, but don't you think you could try harder, or you're really talented, but I'm not sure if this is the right path for you. These comments seem supportive on the surface, but they plant seeds of doubt that can undermine your confidence. Over time, this form of manipulation can erode your self-esteem, making you more reliant on the manipulator's approval and guidance. Isolation is another tactic manipulators use to gain control. They may attempt to distance you from friends, family, or colleagues who might challenge their influence. This can be done overtly by discouraging you from spending time with others, or covertly by sowing doubt about the intentions of the people around you. For example, they might say, I don't think your friends really understand you like I do, or your family doesn't seem to appreciate how much you've grown. These statements are designed to create a sense of division, leaving you more dependent on the manipulator for support and validation. Once they've isolated you, their control becomes even more difficult to escape. Manipulators also have a knack for playing the victim. When confronted about their behavior, they may turn the tables and accuse you of being unreasonable, ungrateful, or overly sensitive. This tactic, known as victimhood manipulation, is designed to deflect responsibility and make you question your perception of the situation. For instance, if you express frustration about their actions, they might respond with, I can't believe you think that about me after everything I've done for you. This shifts the focus away from their behavior and onto your supposed ingratitude, leaving you feeling guilty for even bringing up the issue. One of the more insidious signs of manipulation is the constant shifting of expectations or boundaries. A manipulator will often set arbitrary standards for what they expect from you, only to change those standards once you meet them. For example, they might say, I'd feel more secure in our relationship if you spend less time with your friends, but when you comply, they demand even more sacrifices. This tactic creates a never-ending cycle of trying to meet their expectations, only to find that the goalposts have shifted yet again. This keeps you in a state of uncertainty, always striving to gain their approval, but never quite achieving it. Emotional blackmail is another common tactic, where the manipulator uses your fears, values, or desires against you. They might threaten to withdraw their love or support if you don't comply with their wishes, or they might exploit your desire to avoid conflict by escalating situations until you give in. For example, they might say, if you really love me, you do this for me. Or if you don't help me. Ultimately, the subtlety of these tactics is what makes manipulation so effective. It's not about overt control or aggression, but about creating a web of influence that slowly entangles you over time. Each tactic, whether it's guilt-tripping, narrative control, or emotional blackmail, is designed to chip away at your autonomy and sense of self, leaving you vulnerable to the manipulator's influence. Recognizing these signs is the first step toward reclaiming your power and breaking free from their control. A manipulative individual thrives on the ability to maintain control, and one of their most powerful weapons is the creation of doubt. This isn't the loud, overt kind of doubt that announces itself. It's the slow, creeping type that seeps into your thoughts and causes you to second-guess your instincts, decisions, and even your self-worth. They achieve this through a calculated strategy of misdirection and psychological manipulation that often feels imperceptible at first but grows more pronounced over time. Doubt, once planted, becomes a tool to control your actions, emotions, and perceptions, leaving you vulnerable to their influence. One of the most common ways a manipulator sows doubt is by attacking your memory or perception of events. This tactic, often referred to as gaslighting, involves subtly challenging your recollection of situations or conversations in a way that makes you question your own reliability. For instance, they might claim, that's not how it happened, or I never said that. You must be imagining things over time. These repeated denials of reality can make you feel unsure of your own thoughts and experiences. This confusion is intentional. When you start doubting your memory, you become more likely to defer to their version of events, granting them greater control over your understanding of reality. Another key aspect of creating doubt is the use of mixed messages. Manipulative individuals are experts at sending contradictory signals, whether through their words, actions, or behavior. They might lavish you with praise one moment, only to criticize you harshly the next, leaving you unsure of where you stand. For example, they might say something like, you're so talented, but I'm not sure you're cut out for this kind of work. These back-and-forth interactions keep you in a constant state of seeking their approval as you strive to regain the positive affirmation they initially offered. This inconsistency is a deliberate strategy to destabilize your sense of self and make you more dependent on their validation. Manipulators also excel at exploiting your insecurities to amplify doubt. They are often highly perceptive, able to identify the areas where you feel most vulnerable, whether it's your appearance, abilities, or relationships. Once they've identified these weaknesses, they subtly bring them into conversations cloaked in concern or advice. For example, they might say, I'm only saying this because I care, but don't you think people might judge you for that decision? Or I'm just being honest, you could work a little harder if you really want to succeed. These remarks, while seemingly well-meaning, are designed to plant seeds of doubt that grow into full-blown self-criticism, making you more susceptible to their influence. Silence can also be a powerful tool in creating doubt. Manipulators often employ strategic silence to make you question whether you've done something wrong. For instance, they might give you the cold shoulder or become unusually distant without explanation. This withdrawal is a calculated move to make you feel uncertain and prompt you to seek their approval or reassurance. The absence of communication creates a vacuum that your mind naturally fills with assumptions and self-blame, further eroding your confidence and sense of security. Another subtle yet effective method of sowing doubt is the use of hypothetical scenarios or what-if questions. Manipulators may present these scenarios in a way that makes you feel unsure about your choices or instincts. For example, they might ask, what if you're wrong about this? Or what if everyone else sees it differently than you do? These questions are not meant to foster healthy introspection, but to create a lingering uncertainty that clouds your judgment. When faced with enough of these hypothetical challenges, you may begin to second-guess your ability to make decisions, allowing the manipulator to step in as the voice of reason. Public embarrassment or subtle humiliation is another tactic manipulators use to instill doubt. This doesn't necessarily involve outright ridicule, but could manifest as veiled comments or jokes at your expense in front of others. For example, they might say, "Oh, you're doing that again?" Classic you while laughing it off as a joke. These remarks are designed to make you feel self-conscious and question whether others view you in a similarly negative light. This social aspect of doubt is particularly potent because it not only undermines your confidence but also isolates you, making you feel as though the manipulator is the only person who truly understands you. Comparison is another weapon in the manipulator's arsenal. They might constantly compare you to others in a way that highlights your perceived shortcomings. For example, they could say, "Why can't you be more like someone else?" Or, "It's interesting how someone else manages to handle this so much better than you." These comparisons are meant to make you feel inadequate and foster a sense of competition or unworthiness. Over time, you might find yourself striving to meet these unrealistic standards, further entrenching the manipulator's control over your thoughts and actions. Doubt can also be created through subtle shifts in tone or body language that signal disapproval. Manipulators are often adept at using nonverbal cues to communicate their dissatisfaction or skepticism. A raised eyebrow, a slight frown, or an exasperated sigh can be enough to make you question whether you've made the right choice or said the right thing. These cues are subtle but powerful as they tap into your natural desire for harmony and approval. Over time, you may find yourself constantly second-guessing your actions to avoid triggering these responses. Lastly, manipulators often capitalize on your desire for clarity or closure, deliberately withholding it to keep you in a state of uncertainty. For instance, they might evade direct answers to your questions or give vague, contradictory responses that leave you more confused than before. This lack of resolution forces you to keep returning to them for guidance or explanation, perpetuating a cycle of dependence and control. Manipulative individuals are often experts at creating a sense of emotional dependence, and one of the ways they do this is by exploiting your vulnerabilities. They know how to identify what you need, whether it's love, approval, validation, or affection, and they use these desires against you to keep you tethered to them. This emotional leverage is not immediately obvious because it usually masquerades as care or concern. Over time, however, it becomes clear that the support or affection they offer is conditional and only given when it serves their own agenda. This emotional manipulation is subtle, but it can have profound and long-lasting effects on your well-being. One of the most insidious ways manipulators foster emotional dependence is through intermittent reinforcement. They may shower you with affection, attention, or praise at random intervals, followed by periods of withdrawal or neglect. This inconsistency makes their approval feel precious and hard to attain, driving you to seek it more desperately. For example, they might be extremely loving and caring one day, but the next they'll act distant or critical. This back and forth pattern creates confusion and makes you believe that if you could just behave in the right way, you'd earn their affection consistently. The highs and lows of this emotional roller coaster make you more reliant on their validation, and as a result, you begin to overlook or excuse their negative behaviors because of the moments when they show affection or support. This tactic plays on the natural human desire for stability and security in relationships. You want to feel loved and valued, so when a manipulator intermittently meets those needs, it creates a false sense of hope. You begin to believe that the love or approval you crave is just within reach, but only if you keep working for it. The fear of losing their affection keeps you in a perpetual cycle of trying harder, giving more, and changing yourself to meet their elusive expectations. This is how manipulators create an emotional dependence that allows them to control your actions, choices, and even your sense of self-worth. Another way manipulators reinforce emotional dependence is by acting as if they are the only ones who truly understand you or care about your well-being. They might say things like, "I'm the only one who truly knows what you need," or "No one else would ever be there for you like I am." By positioning themselves as irreplaceable, they create a sense of isolation. You begin to feel as though there is no one else who could possibly support you in the same way, and that you would be lost without them. This isolation deepens your emotional dependence because the idea of leaving the relationship or distancing yourself from them becomes terrifying. You start to believe that no one else will care for you in the same way, and you might even feel guilty for thinking about seeking out support from others. Manipulators also use guilt as a powerful tool to increase emotional dependence. They may play on your sense of responsibility by making you feel as though you owe them something for their love, attention, or help. This might sound like, after everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me, or I've been there for you through thick and thin, and this is how you treat me. These statements are designed to make you feel like you can't leave or reject them because it would somehow be unfair or ungrateful. You begin to internalize the belief that your worth is tied to fulfilling their emotional needs, even if it means sacrificing your own happiness, desires, and well-being. The manipulator may also make you feel responsible for their emotions, making it seem as though their happiness or emotional stability is entirely in your hands. If they're upset or distressed, they may say, if you really love me, you would do this, or I can't handle it if you don't support me. This makes you feel as though you are the sole source of their emotional security, creating an overwhelming pressure to constantly be there for them no matter what. Over time, this can erode your ability to focus on your own emotional needs as you become preoccupied with managing their emotions and fulfilling their demands. Emotional dependence is further strengthened through the manipulator's ability to provoke feelings of inadequacy in you. They might criticize you, undermine your confidence, or make you feel as though you are never doing enough. For example, they may say, if you really loved me, you would do more, or I don't think you can handle this on your own. These comments leave you feeling small and incapable, making you believe that you need their guidance or help to succeed in life. A manipulator might also use emotional blackmail to tighten their grip on your emotions. They might threaten to withdraw their love or affection if you don't comply with their demands. This could look like, if you don't do this for me, I don't know how I can continue this relationship. Or I might just give up on us if you don't change. These threats make you feel trapped, as though your relationship with them is contingent on your ability to meet their needs. The fear of losing their love or approval keeps you in a state of emotional dependency, constantly working to meet their expectations, often at the cost of your own emotional well-being. Over time, this constant need for external validation erodes your sense of self. You begin to base your worth entirely on the approval of the manipulator, losing sight of your own intrinsic value. Your emotional landscape becomes shaped by their moods, behaviors, and whims, and your happiness becomes tied to their treatment of you. You become more and more dependent on their approval, unable to find fulfillment in other areas of your life because your emotional needs are exclusively tied to their actions. This emotional dependence is not something that develops overnight. It's a gradual process. The manipulator carefully cultivates your reliance on them through repeated cycles of affection, withdrawal, guilt, and emotional manipulation. Each time you seek their approval or try to meet their needs, they reinforce the belief that you can't be complete or happy without them. This pattern becomes so ingrained that it feels almost impossible to break free. Yet, this dependency is ultimately a false sense of security, one that is built on manipulation, guilt, and the need to control your emotions. One of the most dangerous traits a manipulative individual can have is their ability to isolate you from other people. Isolation is one of the most effective ways to control another person because it makes them more reliant on you. When someone is isolated, they no longer have the support system of friends, family, or colleagues to turn to for advice, encouragement, or perspective. This isolation allows the manipulator to be the sole voice in your life, shaping your thoughts, decisions, and emotional responses according to their desires. They know that when you are cut off from the people who care about you, you are more susceptible to their influence, making you feel as though they are the only one who understands you or has your best interests at heart. The process of isolation is often subtle and gradual, beginning with small comments that suggest you should spend less time with certain individuals. The manipulator may express concern about the people around you, claiming that they don't have your best interests at heart or that they are a bad influence on you. For example, they might say, I don't know why you spend so much time with them. They never seem to bring you any joy. Or, I've always thought they weren't good for you. They just don't understand you the way I do. These remarks, seemingly harmless at first, plant the seed of doubt in your mind about the people who care about you. Over time, you begin to question whether those individuals really do have your best interests at heart, and the manipulator's voice becomes the one you begin to trust. As you start to distance yourself from the people around you, the manipulator increases their control over your emotional and mental state. They might further encourage this distance by offering themselves as a source of comfort, always being there when you need support or reassurance. The manipulator will be quick to remind you that they're the only one who truly understands your needs, desires, and struggles. They might say, "I've always been here for you and I'll never let you down, or you can rely on me because I'm the only one who really gets it." By positioning themselves as your emotional anchor, they make it more difficult for you to imagine your life without them. They create a false sense of security, convincing you that they are the only person who truly cares for you in the way that you deserve. At the same time, the manipulator might use fear tactics to discourage you from reaching out to others for support. They might suggest that others will judge you or that they don't truly have your best interests at heart. For example, they could say they'll never understand why you want to do this, or if you tell them, they'll think you're crazy for even considering it. These comments are designed to make you feel as though you cannot trust anyone else, reinforcing the belief that the manipulator is the only person you can rely on. They might even go so far as to accuse others of being jealous or envious of your relationship with them, further isolating you from people who could offer a balanced perspective. As you continue to withdraw from your support network, the manipulator may use more direct tactics to control your social interactions. They may start dictating who you can spend time with or where you can go, offering ultimatums or threats if you don't comply. For example, they might say, "If you go to that event, I'm not going to be here when you get back," or "I don't want you hanging out with them anymore, they're bad for you." These attempts to limit your social interactions are designed to create a sense of dependence on the manipulator, making you feel as though you are constantly choosing between your relationships with others and your relationship with them. The fear of upsetting the manipulator or losing their approval becomes stronger than your desire to maintain connections with other people. The manipulator may also engage in behaviors that undermine your confidence or self-esteem, making you feel unworthy of love or support from others. They might criticize your appearance, your choices, or your personality, planting the belief that no one else would care about you the way they do. For example, they could say, "Who else would put up with you?" Or "You're lucky I'm here for you," because no one else will be. This undermining of your self-worth makes it even harder to reach out to others, as you may feel that no one else would accept you or care about you in the same way. The manipulator subtly instills a sense of fear that if you try to form connections outside of the relationship, those connections will only bring you pain or rejection. This gradual process of isolation leaves you more vulnerable to the manipulator's control. When you no longer have a network of people to turn to for advice or emotional support, your only source of guidance becomes the manipulator. They are no longer just a part of your life, they have become the center of it. Every decision, every thought, and every action revolves around their approval or disapproval. This dependency creates a power imbalance in the relationship where the manipulator holds all the power, and you are left feeling helpless, unsure of how to make decisions or navigate your own life without their input. Over time, the isolation becomes so complete that you begin to feel as though the manipulator is the only person who truly cares about you. The absence of other voices and perspectives reinforces the idea that they are the only one who understands your needs, desires, and emotions. You might even begin to lose touch with your own identity, as your self-worth and sense of purpose become tied exclusively to the manipulator's opinions and approval. Their manipulation is so effective that you no longer recognize how far you have drifted from the people and activities that once brought you joy and fulfillment. You are left in a state of emotional and psychological isolation, with the manipulator controlling every aspect of your life. This isolation is not just about physical distance, it's about emotional and psychological separation from everyone else. The manipulator ensures that their influence is the only one that matters, creating an environment where you feel trapped and unable to break free. It's a gradual process, but once the manipulator has succeeded in isolating you from your support system, their power over you becomes absolute. They become the only source of emotional validation, and without their approval, you may begin to feel as though you have no value, no worth, and no identity beyond what they have shaped for you. One of the most destructive characteristics of manipulators is their ability to distort reality and create a false narrative that suits their needs. This tactic is known as gaslighting, and it can be incredibly disorienting, leaving you questioning your own perception of events and your ability to trust yourself. Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation in which the manipulator seeks to make you doubt your own thoughts, feelings, and even your memory, all in an effort to maintain control over you. Over time, this can lead to a deep sense of confusion, insecurity, and self-doubt as you no longer trust your own judgment and rely on the manipulator's version of reality. The manipulator starts by subtly altering the truth, making small changes to facts or events that may seem insignificant at first. They might tell you that something you remember didn't happen the way you recall it, or that your feelings are exaggerated or invalid. For example, they might say, "I never said that," or "You're just being too sensitive." These initial instances may seem trivial, but they are the beginning of a pattern where the manipulator chips away at your sense of reality. The more they distort the truth, the more you begin to question your own experiences and perceptions. The constant contradictions and denial of your lived reality create confusion, leading you to wonder if you are, in fact, the one who is mistaken or irrational. As the manipulator continues to distort the truth, the gaslighting becomes more intense and insidious. They may deny events that you know occurred, invalidate your emotions, or accuse you of making things up. For example, if you confront them about a hurtful action or comment, they might respond with, "You're imagining things or that never happened. You're just overreacting." This constant denial of your truth can cause you to lose confidence in your own thoughts and feelings, and you may start to feel as though you're losing touch with reality. The manipulator's goal is to make you feel confused and uncertain, gradually eroding your sense of self and replacing your perception with their own. The manipulator may also use your weaknesses or insecurities against you, playing on your fears or vulnerabilities to further destabilize your sense of reality. They may make you believe that your doubts or concerns are irrational or unfounded, reinforcing the idea that you are overreacting or imagining things. For example, they might say, "You're just being paranoid, there's nothing to worry about," or "Why do you always blow things out of proportion?" Another tactic used by manipulators is projection. They may accuse you of the very behaviors they are engaging in themselves, turning the tables and making you feel as though you are the problem. If they are being dishonest or deceitful, they might accuse you of lying or being untrustworthy. If they are acting aggressively or controlling, they might accuse you of being overly demanding or manipulative. This projection causes you to feel guilty and responsible for things that you have not done, making you question your actions and intentions. The manipulator deflects attention from their own behavior and places the blame squarely on you, further distorting your sense of reality and making you feel like the issue lies within you rather than with them. As the gaslighting continues, the manipulator may also attempt to isolate you from other people who might offer support or validation. They may suggest that others are not trustworthy, or that your friends and family are biased or not looking out for your best interests. This isolation makes it easier for the manipulator to maintain control over you, as you have no outside sources of reality to compare their version of events with. Without the perspective of others, you begin to rely solely on the manipulator's narrative, which becomes the only version of truth that you have access to. Over time, the cumulative effect of gaslighting is profound. You begin to feel as though you cannot trust your own mind or perceptions, and you may start to feel trapped in a distorted version of reality. You may doubt your memory, question your decisions, and feel unsure about what is true and what is not. The manipulator's constant undermining of your sense of self creates a deep emotional and psychological dependency as you become more reliant on them to define what is real. The more you begin to question yourself, the more power the manipulator gains over you. Gaslighting also works to reinforce the manipulator's control by making you feel weak, crazy, or insecure. By constantly invalidating your thoughts and emotions, they push you into a state of emotional turmoil where you feel as though you are constantly walking on eggshells, never sure of what is acceptable or right. This uncertainty leaves you open to the manipulator's influence as you become more and more reliant on them to tell you what is true and what is not. Their version of reality becomes the one you accept, and over time you lose the ability to trust your own instincts or make decisions without their input. This form of manipulation is particularly dangerous because it operates on a subconscious level, making it difficult for you to recognize that you are being manipulated. The constant questioning of your reality leaves you feeling disoriented and vulnerable, and it becomes harder to break free from the manipulator's grip. You may feel as though you are losing your sense of identity as your thoughts, feelings, and actions become increasingly shaped by their influence. The gaslighter's ultimate goal is to gain power and control over you by destabilizing your sense of self and your ability to trust your own judgment. Through constant distortion of reality, they make you feel as though you are not in control of your own life, and they become the only reliable source of truth. This manipulation over time creates an unhealthy and unbalanced dynamic where the gaslighter holds all the power and you are left questioning everything, including your own worth and abilities. A manipulator often uses a technique known as love bombing to gain control over their victim. This is a strategy where the manipulator showers you with excessive affection, attention, and praise at the beginning of the relationship to create a sense of emotional dependency and attachment. In the early stages, they may seem perfect, saying all the right things, offering overwhelming compliments, and making you feel as though you are the center of their world. This flood of affection creates an emotional high, making you feel special, valued, and appreciated in a way that may feel completely new. It creates a false sense of security and trust, making you believe that the manipulator is someone who genuinely cares for you. The manipulator's goal with love bombing is to break down your emotional defenses by making you feel loved and cherished. They are expert at reading your emotional needs, quickly identifying your vulnerabilities and desires, and fulfilling them in a way that feels authentic and sincere. Their charm is disarming, and it can be easy to mistake their affection for genuine love. They might tell you how much they adore you, how they've never felt this way about anyone before, or how you are the best thing that's ever happened to them. These expressions of love and admiration are designed to create a sense of emotional security and attachment that blinds you to any potential red flags. The manipulator makes you feel as though you are finally receiving the love you have always longed for, and in doing so, they gain your trust and emotional investment. However, this intense attention and affection are not meant to last. Once the manipulator has established a strong emotional connection with you, the pattern shifts. The love bombing phase typically fades, and the manipulator begins to withdraw their affection, slowly introducing emotional distance into the relationship. At this point, you may begin to feel confused, uncertain, and anxious as you notice the shift in their behavior. The manipulator might become less available, less communicative, or less affectionate. This sudden change in behavior can leave you feeling disoriented and unsure of what is happening. You may start to question whether you did something wrong or whether you are somehow